Welcome back, my family. Before we jump into today's horror stories, don't forget to like, subscribe, and share this video with your friends and family. Your comments and likes really help YouTube push our video and show you even more stories. I'd also love to know, where are you watching from and what time is it there? Drop your answers and suggestions in the comments, and who knows, I might give you a shout out in the next video. Thank you for being here and for all your amazing support. I didn't bring my family to the park to get scared. We came for the usual reasons. Clean air, tall pines, a creek cold enough to numb your feet and make you laugh, a break from screens. My wife said the first hour felt like a postcard. Sunlight came through the branches like gold threads. Our toddler, Kylie, pointed at everything, bird, rock, boat, even when there was no boat. That's normal with toddlers. Imagination spills everywhere. The first strange thing was the silence. We were on a wide loop near the ranger station. A breeze moved the needles. Water frothed over stones in the creek. But no insects hummed. No distant engines. When we stopped, the world sounded like a giant held its breath. Pretty, my wife said, though her voice sank on the second syllable, as if she'd seen a shadow pass over the sun. Kylie patted my knee from her carrier and whispered, "He says hi." "Who says hi?" I laughed. "The man in the woods," she said. Not scared, not hiding, a plain little statement like she'd learned the name of a color. I glanced over my shoulder. A man would not have mattered much. This was a busy park. But the trail behind us was empty in a way that felt chosen, like the forest had rolled itself flat around us and smoothed out our tracks. "What does he look like?" I asked. Kylie frowned, the way she does when she reaches for a word that hides. "He doesn't look. He talks in my head." My wife and I exchanged one of those looks you share when your child says something you'll joke about later, except neither of us smiled. We kept walking. A jay screamed once and stopped. My wife took my hand. At the footbridge, the creek narrowed. Water hissed through a V of rocks. On the far bank, the trees grew close, making a wall. Kylie leaned toward it, little fingers gripping the strap. "Daddy," she said, "he wants me to come see." "Not today," I said, light and calm. "We're going to see the waterfall." Kylie's eyes went a shade darker, like clouds pulling over a pond. "He says waterfalls are boring." I laughed again, too loud, too eager to keep the mood bright. "Then he's never been to this one." We crossed the bridge. On the other side, the air changed. It felt cooler, like walking into a church. Needles muted our steps. My wife rubbed her arms. "Let's turn back soon," she said. 15 minutes more. I answered, as if time were a contract. Then Kylie stiffened in the carrier. She pointed left, toward a patch of thin alders where the sun touched moss. "He's there," she said, and before I could tighten the straps, she twisted out of my hands like water slipping from a jar. Her feet hit the ground and she ran. I shouted. The sound didn't travel right. It hit the trunks and folded. My wife sprinted after her. I followed, crashing through ferns, catching sleeves on hook-shaped twigs. Kylie ran straight, as if she followed a line I couldn't see. She never looked back. She didn't stumble. Toddlers don't run that way. The ground sloped. The creek, a broader arm here, curved between black rocks slick as fish. Kylie never broke stride. She reached the bank, looked at us with sudden worry, as if she remembered she was 3, and then something moved on the far side. At first I thought it was a stag. It stepped from the shade into the sun, and I saw antlers like branches, wide and green, soft like they were still velvet. Moss flowed from them in strips. The body was too long, the shoulders too high, the fur wrong, the color of old pennies and wet bark. Its eyes were the worst part. They weren't animal eyes. They were lake eyes, flat, reflective, unblinking. It leaned its head down, the way deer do when they sniff clover. But the movement was careful and deliberate, like a person bending under a doorway. Every part of me shouted, "Don't move. Don't speak. Don't aim it." Kylie smiled, small and dreamy. "He says jump." She stepped into the creek. I lunged. My fingers closed on air and spray. The water took her to the shins, then the hips, then with a slip the chest. The current wasn't strong there. She should have wobbled and cried and let me scoop her. She didn't. She pushed forward, making a path through green water as if a hand held her. The stag didn't back away. It waited, hooves in the stones, antlers bright with dripping light. It lowered its head and touched her hair with the tips of the velvet. The creek brightened like sunlight coming through glass. I hit the water above my knees. It felt colder than snowmelt. Pain shot to my teeth. My legs stopped listening. I tried again, and a force, not a shove, more like a word, said, "No." Kylie climbed the far bank with little climbing sounds, fingers gripping roots, shoes slipping. The stag turned and walked, not fast, but far away with each step, the way things do in dreams. Kylie followed. I knew then that shouting would make it worse. It would make the forest echo and nothing else. So I swallowed the noise, climbed out of the water, and ran along the bank toward the footbridge downstream, where the creek narrowed again. My wife ran with me, ankle deep in mud, breath hitching. At the bridge, we crossed and plunged into the trees. The trail had never been there. I swear that. We should have hit a switchback, a wedge of parking lot noise, a sliver of Ranger Road. Instead, the path slid into a low place where the light went green and thin. Ferns brushed our knees. The air smelled like pennies and wilted flowers. We came into a glade and stopped because everything in me said to stop. The stag stood in the center, head high, hooves planted, antlers scraping a web of sun. Kylie stood to its left, small and still, looking up. A voice behind me said, clear and calm, "Don't run. Don't make yourself prey." I turned. The woman wore the old-style ranger uniform, khaki shirt, green wool trousers bloused into boots, the flat hat with a crease like a star. The badge on her chest was dull from years, not months. Her hair was pinned into a neat roll. She watched the stag with the same careful attention you'd give a ledge. "I'm Maddie Corin," she said as if we'd asked. "Ranger, District 4. You." I gave my name. My wife gave hers. We both said Kylie at once. Maddie nodded once, almost like she'd taken a report. "Daughter?" "Yes." "How old?" "3. "Good," she said, though nothing was good. "The little ones hear it clear. We have to move before it takes the word it wants." "What word?" my wife whispered. "Stay." The stag turned its head as if it had been listening the entire time. Maddie didn't look at it. She stepped past me, slow and steady, like someone approaching a skittish horse. "Kylie," she said, using the soft voice you use in a church. "Do you want to hold my hand?" Kylie considered. Her face was empty in that toddler way. Pure processing, no show. "He says you're old," she said. "I am," Maddie answered. "Older than you think. Older than Daddy. Older than the music you know," Maddie said. And for some reason that worked. Kylie blinked, broke her stare at the stag, and looked at Maddie. Maddie extended her hand. The air felt charged like the second before a storm breaks. The stag breathed. The sound was not air and lungs. It was pages turning in a wet book. Kylie reached for Maddie's fingers. The forest bent. I don't have better words. The trees seemed to tilt together, the way grass does under a breeze. Only we were the grass, and the breeze was a direction I'd never known existed. The light flickered like film, and for a heartbeat the glade filled with people. Men in canvas packs, women in long skirts, a boy in a cap holding a tin lunch pail, a line of workers with shovels. They looked through us like we were the ghosts. Then they were gone, and the glade was only trees again, but in a different order. Maddie took Kylie's hand. The stag stepped forward, slow as ice melting. Its antlers caught on a branch, and the branch blackened like burned sugar. Down, Maddie said, and we ducked, and she led us into a hole in the ferns I swear hadn't been there. It went to a narrow crack in a hill. It looked like a fox den. Maddie slid in without fear. "Where are we going?" I said. "Under," she said. Before it can make her answer, we squeezed through, bellies to dirt, shoulders scraping rock. It opened into a low passage. My wife wriggled ahead, whispering to Kylie. I crawled last. The earth smelt like rust and rain. The sound of the creek went away, replaced by a slow beating I first mistook for my heart. It wasn't. It was deeper, older, patient as a drum played by a glacier. The tunnel opened into a room not made by people. The walls were glistening, not wet, but polished by something that had passed many times. A cold light came from somewhere with no source. In the middle, the floor fell away into a shaft. A thin mist rose out of it like breath from a sleeping animal. "Stay off the lip," Maddie said. "It likes to feel you there." "What is it?" I asked. Maddie touched the brim of her hat like a talisman. "Older than us," she said. "Older than these pines. It doesn't eat. It keeps. There are places in the ground where time sticks. It lives at the edges of those places, the way a spider lives outside its web. It waits for songs." "Songs?" "People," she said simply. "We're made of songs to it." My wife pressed Kylie to her chest. Kylie didn't protest. She looked at the shaft, her mouth open like she listened for a faraway lullaby. "It talked to you?" Maddie asked her gently. Kylie nodded. "He says I can stay and not be big and not get shots." My wife made a noise like something breaking. Maddie knelt, so her eyes were at Kylie's level. "It says sweet things, but it takes your hours and wears them. That's why I like small ones. Their hours are bright and new." "How do you know?" I asked, though I already believed her. "The uniform, the way she moved, the old badge." Maddie took a small notebook from her pocket. The cover was green, frayed at the corners. On the first page, a signature and a date, June 12th, 1975. I saw it like you see dates in dreams. Too clear, too final. "I've carried too many back," she said. "Not all stay back." Above us, the stag's slow tread past like thunder filtered through moss. Dust drifted from the ceiling in pale veils. "We have to go," Maddie said. "It will send a piece down a look." "What piece?" She didn't answer. She stood and led us along the wall, away from the shaft, into a passage that sloped down and then up again in tight switchbacks carved by water and something else. At a bend, the rock bore scratches, tally marks, names, dates from decades. I ran my fingers across a year that belonged to me. Only the date was wrong by 3 days. The skin of my hand prickled as if all the tiny hairs wanted to stand at attention. Kylie stirred. "He says you're rude, Daddy." "I am," I said, breathless, trying to make my voice gentle. "Tell him I'm busy." "He says he'll show me the green room," she said, and her eyes went wide and glassy. "It has the nice hum." Maddie touched my sleeve. "When she hears the hum, you have to talk to her about something small and real. Shoes, apples, the color of the car, something with corners." I spoke. "Your sandals are red." "They're pink," she said, almost offended. And just like that, her face unfroze. The passage ended at a chamber cut with straight lines, human work. Concrete patched the walls. Rusted ladders climbed to a hatch. A dead lantern hung from a hook. The air smelled like chance and rain. "Old service tunnel," Maddie said. "They capped most of them after my time." She looked at me, and for a second the mask of calm slipped. There was grief there and a beat of anger. She put her hand on the hatch. "Help me." We heaved. The hatch lifted. Above, a slat of daylight. Cold wind spilled down, skating the sweat on my neck. And then, from the quiet behind us, a new sound began, a tapping soft and cheerful, like fingernails finding a tune on wood. "Don't turn," Maddie said. "Don't look back at it. That's how it gets your face. Up. Now." We climbed. The ladder shook. Kylie went first on my wife's back, light, trusting. I climbed with the kind of animal speed I didn't know I had. When I reached the lip, the world spun, pine, sky, cloud, and then steadied. We were in a ravine a half-mile from the trail, with the creek far below like a strip of foil. The hatch was hidden under a mat of needles and dead branches. Maddie came up last and pulled the hatch shut. The tapping stopped. The silence that followed felt like a held breath again, this time on our side. "Move," she said. We moved. We didn't run. We did what she did, a long, ground-covering walk that didn't challenge the forest, didn't say, "Hey, chase me." After a while, we could hear the distant, normal noises again. Kids shouting somewhere, a car door, a dog bark. The world got ordinary one leaf at a time. At the footbridge, we stopped. My legs shook. My wife sat on a rock and buried her face in her hands. Kylie touched her hair and said, like it was a brand new word, "Waterfall." I turned to thank Maddie. She was standing a few steps back, hat in her hands, looking at the creek with an expression I couldn't read. "Listen," she said, and her voice had a new weight. "You have to keep her in the daylight a while. Talk to her. Don't let her get bored. Don't let her listen at vents or cracks. Put salt at the threshold for a week." Is that I started to say old story thing, but her face stopped me. "It's for you, not it," she said. "It reminds you where the door is. That matters." "Will we see you again?" my wife asked. Maddie smiled, small, tired. "You already have." "What do you mean?" She tipped her hat. "I have to go back the long way." "What's the long way?" "Through 1975, she said softly, as if it were just another trail. Then she looked at Kylie. "You're brave." Kylie blinked. "He says you're not supposed to be here." Maddie's eyes went distant, like she heard a radio from far away. "He says that a lot." She stepped backward. The light seemed to cut her into pieces and put her together again. In one blink she was there. In the next, the space she had occupied was filled with ordinary air. We stood a long time, listening to the creek. Then we walked back to the car, hands held, saying small, cornered things. Red sandals, apples, the color of the car. My wife drove. I kept talking. Kylie watched the trees go by, serious. We stayed in town that night instead of the campground. A cheap motel, thin towels, soft beds. I carried salt from the diner, the kind in the little paper packets, and lined the base of the door, the window sill, the bathroom threshold. It felt silly until it didn't. Kylie fell asleep fast, the way kids do after a day, made bigger than their bodies. In the blue light of the TV, we didn't watch. I dozed in the chair by the window, the desert of exhaustion spreading behind my eyes. When the room had settled to its night sounds, the fridge coughing, the neighbor's muted steps, I woke to a voice in my head. A soft voice. A voice I would have held on to forever if I could. "Daddy?" I looked at the bed. Kylie lay on her back, mouth open, dreaming. Her chest rose and fell. "Daddy, can you hear me?" The voice was not outside. It was right where my thoughts live. I sat up slow. My wife slept on the other bed, arm flung across her face. I could see the salt line, thin and bright like frost. "Sweetheart," I whispered. The voice giggled, not like Kylie giggles, but like that sound passed through water. "I can show you, Daddy. It's green. It hums. I can stay small." A very old part of me wanted to say yes. To keep her small, safe, simple. To hold this moment with duct tape and prayer. I swallowed. "No," I said out loud this time, because sometimes the air needs to hear the word. "No, baby. We grow." Silence. Then a feeling like a hand on the inside of my skull, soft as a moth. "He says you're rude again." "I am," I said. "Tell him we're busy." Kylie rolled over. For a second, in the light from the parking lot, her eyes opened. They shone a strange shade of green, like sunlight through leaves. Then they closed, and she sighed, a little hitching sound that was only hers. I sat there until morning, listening for the hum and naming every corner thing I could. Shoes, apples, the color of the car. When the sun came up, it came like a witness. We checked out. We drove, slow and normal, like people who had done a simple thing. Spent a day in the woods, slept in a motel, ate waffles. We didn't say never again, because that felt like a dare. We said later, the way you do when you hope later will be kinder. On the highway, somewhere between the pines and the billboards, Kylie woke and watched the clouds. She didn't speak for a long time. When she did, she didn't use her mouth. Daddy? Yes. You can hear me, right? Yes. Okay, she said, satisfied, and in the rear-view mirror her eyes looked brown. Then she smiled, and the mirror showed a flash of green again, quick as a fish in a shallow stream. Just tell me if the waterfall is boring, okay? I said in my head, not sure who I was saying it to. Her laughter filled the car, bright and ordinary, the kind you'd follow anywhere. And somewhere far under the road, something old turned a page and waited. A quick announcement here. If you're still here and enjoying these stories but haven't subscribed yet, please take a second to do so. Drop a comment too. It really helps push the video out to more people. Your support means everything, and it truly makes my day. I took the badge of McNeely Pines because it looked like a clean break. Fresh start, quiet woods, steady paycheck. The brochure showed pines like cathedral pillars and a creek, so clear the stones looked polished. On my first day, they issued me a Geiger counter and a respirator and said the words toxic spill like you say rainstorm. The spill had happened 3 years before in a canyon on the north side. Hazmat fencing went up. Signs warned hikers away. Quarantined wildlife preserve. Do not enter. There's a kind of silence that happens in places people have decided to forget. The birds still sing. The breeze still moves. But something in the air feels like a held breath. That was McNeely Pines. My supervisor was a broad-shouldered man named Bruce who loved rules the way a dog loves a fence. He walked me through maps and codes and kept touching his radio like he needed to feel it. Stay out of the north fence, he said. If you see anything inside it, call me first. That's not a guideline. That's a command. What am I going to see? I asked. He stared at me, and for a second I thought he'd make a joke. Then I realized he was deciding how much to tell me. Sometimes a sick elk wanders out, he said. Sometimes you think you see campers. You didn't. You mean people? I asked. You didn't, he said again, and tapped the radio. We patrolled the usual trails. We warned usual tourists about food storage and selfies with bears. The first week was work you can do with half your mind, like mowing a lawn. But every time the wind swung around from the north, a strange smell came with it. Copper and old coins and something burnt sweet, like spilled cough syrup in a hot car. I'd catch it and look up, and the pines would all be pointed one way, as if the forest had leaned toward a whisper. We got a call on a Tuesday near dusk. 3 voices on a channel that wasn't one of ours. I'd never heard that frequency before. The words were messy with panic. Baby, please. No, they're coming back. Then a child crying so close to the mic that it sounded like it was inside my ear. Bruce grabbed the radio, barked our call signs, asked for location. Static answered. He looked at me. The day was almost gone. The north fence glowed in the last light like a band of mercury. We'll drive the perimeter, he said. We don't go in. The perimeter road was packed dirt and gravel. It traced the fence like a scar. At gate 7 we stopped. Something had tugged the chain and left scuff marks in the dust. On the other side, the ground sloped to a thicket of alder and willow. In that thicket I saw the flash of white fabric moving. Hello. I called before he could stop me. A woman stepped into view, maybe 30, hair stuck to her face with sweat and leaves. She held a baby to her chest. A boy of 6 clung to her shirt. Behind her, in the shadow of the shrubs, I could see the collapsed dome of a tent. "Please," she said, "please open the gate. We can call help," I said, because that's what you say when you're a ranger and there's a line you're not supposed to cross. "Stay where you are. They took my husband," she said. Her eyes were too wide and too dry. She wasn't crying anymore. She had run out. I don't know where. "Please." Bruce spoke low. "Get back in the truck. We can't leave them. We can't let them out," he said. He never raised his voice. He didn't need to. He had that tone career officers get, the one that says I can see over your horizon. But I couldn't leave a child in a thicket while the sun bled out. I clipped my side cutters off the belt and snapped one link, then another until the chain fell slack. I slid the gate. The woman staggered forward with the baby. The boy followed, looking over his shoulder. "What's in there?" I asked. "What happened?" She shook her head. "I can't," she glanced back again. "We shouldn't be here." "Agreed," Bruce said tightly. "Everybody in the truck. Now." That was when the smell rolled over us, thick and sweet and wrong. The baby turned his head toward it the way birds turn to the sun. Branches moved in the thicket even though the wind had died. Something rose, slow and deliberate, like a person standing up from a low chair. For half a second, I thought it was a man in torn clothes. Then I saw the angles were wrong. The arms were too long. The head was wrapped in something like cloth, but the cloth had soaked through and dried into a lace of black. Strips of script were written across it, small, tight lines, like 1,000 prayers in a tiny hand. It stepped into the light, and the script gleamed as if wet. I had the stupid thought that someone had written on it with a fountain pen. "Back!" Bruce shouted and raised his service rifle. The baby stopped crying. It stared at the thing with an animal interest. The thing tilted its head, listening. More movement in the shrubs, 2 more, then 3, then a shape that crawled and then stood and then crawled again like it couldn't decide what the ground meant. Each wore the lace of script in different ways. Wrapped around the skull, cut into the forearms, threaded through the ribs like floss. I knew then that this wasn't a spill you could mop. I aimed at the ground near the closest one and fired a warning shot. It didn't flinch. It cocked its head further, as if considering the sound the way you might listen to a new song. Then, from deeper in the thicket, a voice spoke. It wasn't loud, but it carried. It sounded like a group of people speaking the same word at the same time. It said, "Hello." The woman made a dry noise in her throat and shoved the boy toward me. "Take him," she said. "Get in the truck," Bruce called, not looking away from the line of figures. "Drive to Station 2 and tell them Gate 7 is compromised. Use the call sign I gave you." "What about you?" He didn't answer. He stepped forward like he intended to use his body as a door. I got the boy into the truck, yanked open the passenger door, helped the woman climb in with the baby. She wouldn't let go of my sleeve. "Don't leave him," she said. "Don't you leave him." I ran back. The line of script-wrapped figures had halted just inside the fence, not because the fence was there, it wasn't not anymore, but as if they were pausing at a threshold only they could see. The one with the wrapped head lifted its hands and touched the cut chain. It sighed. I knew it was a sigh because I felt the shape of it in my chest. "Go!" Bruce barked at me. "I'm not." "Go," he said again, and this time he used my name the way a man uses his last dollar. I drove. The woman murmured to the baby in a voice that had no words. The boy stared out the window and whispered numbers to himself. At Station 2, the gate keypad had a second layer I hadn't seen before, a panel that flipped down and asked for a code I had never been taught. The woman reached over me and tapped a 4-digit sequence without looking. The inner gate slid open. She didn't seem surprised. "How do you?" I started. "This isn't a park," she said. "It's a lid." Inside the station was the world, the brochures never show. No cedar smell, no gift shop, a concrete corridor with a steel door, an airlock, a bank of cameras looking at black and white feeds of the north side. I'd worked enough federal land to recognize the signs of money. Fresh paint on old walls, new locks on old doors, new computers plugged into old stories. I should have called it in. I should have pressed the panic alarm. I didn't. I followed the woman down the corridor because she walked like she'd been here before. The boy stayed at my side like a shadow. The baby had fallen asleep as if the smell were a lullaby. "You said your husband was taken," I said. "By what?" "By them," she said, and nodded toward the monitors. On one screen, I saw figures moving along the fence line. They dragged lengths of wire behind them, not tangled, but arranged in patterns on the ground, circles, squares, a shape like a comb. They needed spare parts, she said quietly. Spares that still carried a voice. Parts? She stopped at a door marked Authorized Personnel Only and flipped a switch I hadn't noticed. The door clicked. Inside was a small office, desk, metal cabinet, stale coffee smell. On the wall, framed certificates with state seals. The dates were wrong, stamped with years that didn't exist yet, like someone planning for a future they expected to own. She went to the cabinet, opened it, and took out a red folder with a simple black stamp. "Kiss you are." "What is that?" I asked. "An old word from an old place," she said. "They said it meant the bond of blood, or the writing that makes a thing listen." The folder held photographs stapled to reports. The photos were of human bodies lying on stainless steel. Black script wrote itself across their skin in thin lines. In the margins, a hand had translated some of it. Names of rivers, names of kings, the word gate written over and over. There were photos of animals with the same script. Deer, coyotes, a black bear whose claws had been removed and replaced with copper rods. The reports used language I'd only ever seen in classified briefings. Controlled leak, non-standard containment, ritual substrate. My fingers left sweat on the plastic sleeves. "This is a joke." She shook her head. "They found a way to make the body obey symbols the way a computer obeys code. But the code needed active ink that moved, ink with a heart behind it. Blood," I said. She nodded. "They called it a spill. But the drums weren't drums. They were fonts. And the canyon wasn't poisoned. It was written. A new smell then. Gun oil and breath and something like cinnamon." Bruce came in, breathing hard. He had blood on his sleeve, and it wasn't his. He shut the door and twisted the lock like it meant anything. "You cut the fence," he said to me. "You cut the fence." "I let a mother and 2 kids out," I said. He looked at the woman, then back at me. "She's not a camper." "Who is she?" He didn't answer. He looked at the folder in my hands and made a sound like an animal being cornered. "You shouldn't see that." The radios on the desk stuttered. Voices came through, low and layered, like a choir practicing the same vowel. The metal cabinet rattled. The lock on the door made a tiny metallic click as if a key had been turned in a keyhole that wasn't there. "Back," Bruce said and drew a sidearm. "All of you back." The boy slipped his hand into mine. The woman turned her face toward the door with the kind of stillness you only see on people who've already been through the worst thing that can happen to them. The hinges sighed. The door flexed in the frame. The script on the photographs seemed to shiver. Then the top half of the door bowed inward and a hand slid around the edge. Not a human hand. The fingers had too many joints. Script wrapped, each knuckle like rings. Bruce fired. The sound exploded in the small room, making my ears shriek. The hand withdrew. The door flexed again, once, twice, and then the frame gave with a dry crack. The creatures entered not like attackers, but like polite guests stepping into a parlor, curious and patient. The head-wrapped one looked at me with the weightless attention of a child watching a moth. "Get them out," Bruce said, and he meant the woman and the kids. He put himself between us and the hall. He fired until the slide locked back, and then swung the empty pistol like a hammer. When the first of the figures reached him, he didn't run. He shoved it into the wall hard enough to dent plaster. It reached for his face the way a person might reach to wipe away a tear. I pulled the woman through the back. There's always a back in places like this. A service corridor, a stair, a door to a door. We came out in the garage bay. A white van waited with its engine cold. On the wall, a red lever with a tag, secondary seal. I yanked it. Somewhere outside, something heavy fell. The bay door shook. We drove. The boy didn't speak. The baby slept. The woman watched the rear view like a person who expects to see her own name written across the sky. I kept the speed steady so the tires wouldn't sing. At the south gate, she reached over and tapped the code again. The gate opened. We crossed the line between inside and world, and the smell thinned to nothing. "Who are you?" I asked. She laughed once. No humor. "I was a researcher," she said. "Then I was a volunteer. Then I was a wife." She touched the baby's head. "Now I'm a courier." "Courier for what?" She looked at the folder in my lap. I didn't remember picking it up, but there it was, red and heavy as a stone. "For the truth," she said. "If you can carry it." I dropped them at a clinic 2 towns over with a name so clean it sounded fake. She didn't say thank you. I didn't ask for it. When I got back to McNeely Pines at dawn, the north fence had been rebuilt. New chains, new locks, new signs that said the same old lie. The station office looked scrubbed. The desk was clear. The cabinet was empty. The monitors showed a deer grazing, a hawk riding a thermal, a piece that felt like stage scenery. I asked for Bruce. They told me he'd been transferred. I asked where. They said out. I turned in my badge that afternoon. The chief shook my hand and called me by a name that wasn't quite mine, like he was reading it off a list. I drove away with the red folder under my seat and the smell of copper still faint in my hair. Sometimes at night the radio on my kitchen counter crackles. It isn't plugged in. Voices drift out, soft, layered, saying the same word. "Hello." I turn the dial to nothing. I keep the folder in a drawer by the sink. I've read it too many times. The last page is handwritten in a careful script that is not the script on the bodies. It lists terms the way a dictionary does. Bond, gate, host, seal. The final line is simple. If you cut the fence, the writing walks. I still drive past parks on weekends. I watch families at picnic tables. I see kids run past the pines and put their hands on the bark like it's a friend. I want to tell them to keep moving, to stay in the parts of the forest with names and maps and ice cream stands. But I don't. I just watch the wind and wait for a smell that shouldn't be there. If I ever smell it again, metal and sugar and heat, I'll keep driving. Not because I'm brave, because I know what gates look like now and how easy a pair of cutters can make the worst mistake of your life. I've worked trails most of my life, but Nevada's backcountry is different. The desert hides things, and the mountains keep secrets no one writes down. Officially, my district included a few canyons, a dry lake bed, and the ruins of an old mining town called Carrion Hollow. That place was marked off limits on every map. Too unstable, the higher-ups said. Bad shafts, bad ground. We were told to keep visitors away. I didn't ask questions. Not then. One August evening, a pickup flagged me down near the Hollow's outer trailhead. A family had parked their RV at a pull-off and hadn't returned from short hike. The sun was slipping behind the ridges, and August nights here turned sharp and cold. I promised the driver I'd check it out. The RV was easy to find. White with peeling stripes, door open, a cooler tipped over. No tracks but theirs. I called out, but the canyon threw my voice back like it was mocking me. On the picnic table was a child's stuffed bear. Its fur was ragged, the kind of toy you don't forget behind. Might get twisted. Something was wrong. Carrion Hollow sat in a bowl of cliffs. The mining company had abandoned it in the 1940s, leaving boards and rust and a graveyard of machinery. Most of the shafts were sealed, but you could still feel the holes underfoot, like empty lungs. As I made my way down, I spotted movement between two shacks, quick, low, too pale for a coyote. My hand went to my flashlight before my sidearm. Some animals spook easy if you hit them with light. When the beam cut through, I froze. The shape wasn't any animal I knew. It was a man, no, not quite. His back hunched, skin stretched tight over bones. His jaw was crooked, lips peeled back like he'd forgotten how to close them. He blinked at the light and then scuttled away, too fast for his frame. I should have left, radioed for backup, but the bear on the table kept flashing in my mind. Kids don't leave toys unless someone makes them. In one of the collapsed bunkhouses, I found them, the missing family. They were huddled together, duct tape across the father's wrists, the mother gagged, the daughter crying without sound. The second I reached for my knife to cut them loose, a shadow filled the doorway. She stepped inside like she owned the place. At first glance, she looked normal. A woman in her 30s maybe, long hair tied back, wearing a miner's coverall too big for her frame. Her eyes locked on me, steady and wrong, like she'd learned how to mimic people but hadn't gotten the rhythm right. "You shouldn't be here," she said, calm as a cashier. "They're ours." Behind her, more of the pale figures shuffled in, deformed men and women, some with limbs bent at angles no joint should allow, others with faces collapsed like clay left in rain. Their eyes shone in the light like animals caught on the road. "Step back," I said, my voice shaking. "I'm taking them out." The woman tilted her head, smiling faintly. "No, you'll feed them." They rushed me. Not graceful, not strong, but too many. I fired once. Warning shot high into the rafters. The crack echoed and made them hesitate. I grabbed the family, cut the tape, pulled them toward the rear. The woman didn't chase. She just watched. "They were mine before you came," she said. "They'll be mine after." We scrambled into the mining tunnels. Old timbers groaned above us. The air stank of rot and wet stone. My flashlight cut across the walls, and that's when I saw the bones. Piles of them, stacked like firewood, children's shoes among them. Something scraped behind us. The creatures were following. The tunnels twisted. Sometimes they were dug by hand, sometimes widened by collapse. I almost lost the beam, almost lost the family in the dark. The girl clung to me, her sobs muffled into my jacket. Her parents kept whispering thank yous, though their voices were ragged, more like prayers than gratitude. We reached a cavern where lanterns burned. Real lanterns, new fuel, new wicks. And in that cavern, cages. Inside, more people. Not dead, alive. Some were old men, some women, a few young like the family. They stared at me with eyes that begged without hope. The woman stepped from the shadows. She wasn't alone. Half a dozen of the creatures surrounded her like children circling their mother. "You see now," she said. "We keep them. We feed. They're what's left of Carrion Hollow. The miners starved us, buried us, left us to rot. But the ground kept us. We keep the ground fed." Her words crawled into me. They didn't sound like lies. They sounded like a history too ugly to print in park brochures. I raised my gun. My hand shook. "Let them go." Her smile widened. "Shoot. Another will take my place. Always a mother. Always a family." The creatures hissed and shuffled. Behind me, the rescued family pressed together, the father clutching a rusted pipe like it could save him. I knew we wouldn't want to fight in that cavern. I lobbed a rock at a lantern. Glass shattered. Flame licked the oil. Smoke curled. In the chaos, I grabbed the nearest cage latch and wrenched until it snapped. People spilled out, weak but alive. Screams rose, some human, some not. I shoved the family ahead, yelled at the others to run, though half staggered more than sprinted. The fire caught dry boards, timbers groaned, the ceiling shook. We barreled through the dark, creatures shrieking behind us. I fired twice, blind into the echoes, not caring if I hit, just to slow them. The ground quaked, as if the mine itself wanted to close. We burst into night air through a collapsed shaft. Cold stars hung above us like silent witnesses. The family didn't stop. They sprinted for the ridge. I dragged 2 others up by their arms. Behind us, smoke poured from the shaft, and in the flicker I saw her, the mother, standing calm at the cave mouth, fire painting her eyes red. She didn't follow. She only raised one hand, like a wave goodbye. By dawn, the survivors were scattered. Some never made it back. We called law enforcement, but by the time they searched Carrier Hollow, the mine had collapsed fully. No bodies, no cages, just stone and ash. The family was treated for shock. The father swore he'd never camp again. The daughter clutched her bear, silent. My report? I wrote abandoned mine hazards, probable squatters. That was the line they wanted. Clean, containable, but I know better. Sometimes when the wind comes out of Carrier Hollow, it carries a sound like voices. Not cries, not words, just a low chorus like people singing from under rock. And I remember her face, too calm, too patient. The mother, waiting for the next ranger foolish enough to step past the signs. The hollow doesn't forget. It feeds, and maybe one day it will need more than bones. People think being a ranger is about trees, maps, and lost hikers. In Gorham, it's about surviving things that shouldn't exist. I'll tell you one night in particular. The night I realized our park isn't just a park. Everyone called me Little J. Not because I was small, but because my partner was Jay Hardwick, Big J, or, more often, Wiki. The man knew everything, from bird calls to local myths. He'd been here 10 years and carried the kind of calm that makes you think he's already seen the worst. Rule number 1 in Gorham, Wiki told me my first week. Don't trust the normal sounds. Owls, coyotes, kids laughing. You hear it where it shouldn't be, you head the other way. We patrolled together, 2 flashlights against too much darkness. That night, the radio buzzed with a report of a bear acting strange near Trail 6. Strange meant dangerous, so we hiked fast. We found the bear at the clearing, or what I thought was a bear. It was bigger than any black bear should be, shaggy and scarred. But what froze me wasn't its size. It was the second head. Both heads moved in sync, sniffing, snorting. Then in voices that scraped like rocks, they spoke. "Who walks here?" one head said. "2 snacks," the other answered. I almost fired, but Wiki stepped forward, steady as stone. "Grow, Rolf. You know the rules. This is our trail." The bear blinked both sets of eyes. "We hunger," one said. Wiki nodded. "Then hunt outside the line. You cross again, I'll bind you." Something passed between them. An animal snarl, a human sigh, and then the thing lumbered into the brush. I swear I heard the heads arguing as it vanished. My hand shook. What the hell was that? Wiki lit a cigarette. Locals say they were brothers once. Fought too long. Got sewn together by something older than the trees. They'll test you, but they know the rules. I wanted to ask who wrote those rules. I didn't. We were halfway back when the woods went silent. No wind, no crickets. Wiki cursed under his breath. They're near. Shapes moved between the pines. Tall. Wrong. Their arms dangled past their knees, swinging like ropes. Pale skin caught the moonlight. Faces too smooth, as if noses and mouths had been erased. They didn't walk. They unfolded, joint after joint like paper puppets. "Don't let them touch you," Wiki whispered. "They stretch what they touch." I raised my light. The nearest one recoiled, hissing like wet wood on a fire. Another reached for me, fingers impossibly long. I swung my baton and cracked its arm. The limb bent back, not breaking, just twisting further until it wrapped around the trunk of a tree like rope. "They want the kid," Wiki said. "What kid?" Then I heard it, a boy crying somewhere deeper in. We followed the cries to a pit where an old picnic shelter had collapsed. A boy, maybe 8, sat trapped under beams. His shirt was torn, but he wasn't bleeding, just staring at the dark like it whispered to him. "They call him Smitty," Wiki said. "Special kid. The things want him because he shines." Before I could ask what that meant, the ground shook. Out of the trees came something worse than the pale creatures. It stood nearly 9 feet tall, stitched together from bodies. Arms of different sizes, torsos sewn side by side, a face made from too many mouths. Chains wrapped its chest like jewelry. "Raka the Strong," Wiki muttered. The thing bellowed, a sound like dozens of throats at once. The pale creatures slunk back, almost bowing. We didn't have time to think. Wiki shoved me forward. "Get the boy. I'll keep it busy." I scrambled into the pit. The beams were heavy, but adrenaline makes you strong. "Smitty, can you move?" He nodded, eyes wide. "He says I'm his." "No, you're mine tonight," I said, hauling him free. Behind me, Raka swung a tree trunk like a club. Wiki dodged, firing his shotgun point blank. The blast tore a chunk of stitched flesh, but the thing didn't fall. It laughed, not mocking, joyful, like it loved the pain. I grabbed Smitty's hand and ran. The pale creature circled, arms swaying. One lunged, brushing my sleeve. The fabric stretched thin as paper, threads unraveling. My skin beneath prickled like it wanted to peel. I swung the flashlight beam into its blank face. It shrieked, retreating. Wiki yelled, "Go! Don't look back!" I didn't. We made it to the ranger's shack by the south trail. The emergency lights glowed red. I slammed the door, bolted it. Smitty curled in the corner, rocking. That's when I noticed the symbols. Carved into the walls, drawn in chalk on the floor. Circles, triangles, marks that made my eyes ache. Voices drifted outside, human, chanting. I peeked through the slit. Figures in robes moved between the trees, torches in hand. "They're the feeders," Wiki had warned me once. "Cultists. They keep the monsters alive, give them sacrifices." Now they wanted Smitty. The door shuttered. Chains rattled. Raka's voice boomed, "The boy." I pulled Smitty close. "Not tonight." The window shattered. A pale arm reached through. I slashed with my knife, cutting deep. Black fluid sprayed, hissing as it hit the wood. The creature withdrew, keening. The door burst. Raka ducked under, filling the room. The cultist chanted louder, the symbols on the walls glowing faintly. Then Wiki appeared. His shirt was torn, blood running down his arm, but his eyes blazed. "Get the kid out, little J. Now!" He slammed a flare into Raka's chest. Fire erupted, catching the stitched seams. Raka roared, swinging wildly, chains clattering. Wiki was thrown against the wall but kept moving, stabbing, striking, burning. I dragged Smitty through the rear hatch, into the night. We ran until my lungs tore. The chanting faded. The forest swallowed the noise. At dawn, backup arrived. The shack was a ruin, smoke rising. No sign of Raka, no sign of the cult, and no sign of Wiki. They wrote it up as a wildfire incident. The official report listed me as the only ranger on duty. They told me to forget the details. I didn't argue, but sometimes when I walk Trail 6, I hear a voice in the wind. Wiki's voice. "Keep the boys safe. Smitty's in foster care now. The case file calls him a missing child recovered. Nothing about what tried to take him. Nothing about what's still out there. And me? I still patrol Gorham. Still listen for normal sounds in the wrong places. Because I know the park doesn't sleep. And one night, Raka will come back, Stitch smile waiting. Yellowstone is old ground. You feel in your teeth when the geysers shake, in your chest when the bison thunder across the flats. But what I found underneath it, what I wasn't supposed to find, was older than even the ground itself. I'd been a ranger for 6 years when I stumbled on it. My assignment was routine, checking storm drains near the visitor center, making sure runoff wasn't backing up. While I was in the maintenance shed, I found a rolled-up blueprint jammed behind a cabinet. It wasn't like the maps I'd seen before. The lines were too precise, the paper too yellowed, and the tunnels, they didn't match anything in our records. Some looped under geyser basins, others stretched beneath backcountry trails miles from any building. One tunnel started right beneath where I stood. Curiosity is a ranger's curse. I should have ignored it. Instead, I found a hatch under the shed, rusted shut, and pried it open. A ladder led down into darkness. The air smelled like wet iron. My flashlight beam cut across concrete walls and pipes older than my grandfather. Every 50 feet, doors branched off, heavy steel ones, most locked tight. Graffiti covered the walls. Not new tags. Old names, date from the 1980s, scratched into the paint. At first I thought maybe workers had left them, but then I found the first backpack. It was leaning against the wall, fabric faded but intact. Inside were snacks, a camera, a hiker's permit dated 1984. The weird part? The chips were still crisp. I pushed deeper. 2 hours in, I reached a chamber with a half-collapsed ceiling. In the beam of my light, something moved. My hand went to my radio, then froze. They were people. 4 of them, huddled together, clothes neon bright, like the kind you only saw in the 80s, windbreakers, high socks. Their faces were pale but untouched, like they'd walked into the tunnels yesterday. One of them looked at me, eyes wide. "Are we out yet?" he asked. His voice was raw, like he hadn't spoken in days. I stammered, "It's 2020. You've been missing for 36 years. The group exchanged confused looks. One woman started crying. Another shook her head violently. "No," she said. "We've only been here since Saturday." I wanted to believe them, but the permit in my pocket said otherwise. I barely got them topside before headlights flooded the maintenance shed. Black SUVs rolled in, unmarked but official. Men in suits and respirators stepped out. They weren't park rangers. They weren't tourists. The one in charge flashed a badge too fast for me to read. "Containment breach," he said. "We'll take it from here." The hikers protested. They clung to me like I was their lifeline. The agents pried them away, herding them into vans. One of the men tossed me a clipboard sign full of dense jargon about exposure mitigation and temporal variance. I signed. I didn't know what else to do. Before they left, one agent leaned in close. "Forget this tunnel exists. For your own good." I couldn't forget. For weeks, I dreamed of the hikers' faces, alive, desperate, young despite the years. One night, I went back. Same hatch, same ladder. Only this time, the steel doors weren't all locked. Behind the first one, I found a cot, a tray of food untouched, but not spoiled, and a notebook scrawled with phrases over and over. "It's only been days. Don't believe the clocks. They want our hours." Behind the second, glass tanks lined the walls. Inside floated bodies. Not dead, not alive. Suspended like they were paused. Tubes ran from their arms into machines humming low. And in the center of the room, binders. Reports. I skimmed them with shaking hands. Temporal leakage consistent with underground detonations. Harvesting protocol initiated. Subjects exhibit halted senescence. Aging reversal trials proceeding. High-value assets earmarked. The words blurred, but one line burned clear. The park provides a stable supply of displaced individuals. It wasn't nuclear waste. It wasn't radiation. Those tunnels were a wound in time, a leak that swallowed hikers whole and kept them young while the world above moved on. And the government wasn't sealing it, they were farming it. Every missing person flyer I'd ever seen taped to our bulletin boards. The smiling faces, the desperate pleas from families. They weren't lost to bears or cliffs. They were down there, trapped in the tunnels, their lives siphoned off to keep some program alive. I staggered back, ball rising in my throat. That's when I heard the footsteps. The cleanup crew was back. Voices echoed down the hall. I killed my light and ran, heart hammering. My boots splashed through shallow water, breath loud in the silence. At a junction, I ducked into a side shaft and pressed against the wall. The agents passed, flashlights sweeping. One of them spoke into his radio. Ranger breach confirmed. Orders. Static crackled. Then, recover the folder. Terminate if necessary. My skin went cold. I ran harder. Somehow, I found the ladder and scrambled up, bursting into the night air. No SUVs this time. Just my truck waiting. I drove until the park was a memory in the rearview mirror. I filed no report. I told no one. I thought maybe they'd let it drop. But sometimes, in the mail, I get envelopes with no return address. Inside are pages torn from notebooks. New names, new dates, handwriting I don't recognize. One note just said, "Still Saturday." Another, "They're taking us one by one." And once, written in a shaky, childlike scrawl, "Ranger Tom, please come back. You said you'd help. I can't go back. If I do, I'll vanish like the rest." But staying away doesn't help them either. Some nights, when I wake sweating, I wonder how many missing hikers the tunnels still hold. Dozens? Hundreds? Maybe more? And what happens when the government perfects their aging reversal? Do they still need the tunnels? Or do they make more? Yellowstone's geysers roar, the bison thunder, the tourists take their photos. The world sees beauty. I see the hatch in the shed, the ladder, the faces that never aged. And I hear the notebooks whisper in my mind, they want our hours. Parents love the campground at Pine Hollow because it feels safe. Picnic tables, fire rings, trails no longer than a mile. But if you work there long enough, you notice the pattern. Children vanish. Not for long, just a night. And they always come back. I was Ranger Lisa Brooks when I first logged the disappearances. At first, they were just whispers, parents embarrassed, kids found asleep in the wrong tent. But by my second summer, the whispers got louder. Too many kids, too many missing hours. It was July, heat shimmering off the pines. A couple from Oregon waved me down before dawn. Their son, 6 years old, was gone from the tent. They swore he was zipped in between them. No footprints, no torn fabric. We searched until the sun was high. Then he walked back into camp like nothing had happened. His shoes were clean, his eyes unfocused. When I asked where he'd been, he said, "The machine was loud." It made me tired. I wrote it up as child wandered. My supervisor told me not to overthink it, but I couldn't forget that phrase. By August, it had happened 4 more times. Always at night. Always kids between 5 and 12. Always found by morning. They remembered nothing, except odd fragments. One girl said she saw the blue wires. Another whispered that something big was sleeping under the ground. Their parents shrugged it off. Relief makes people blind. But I kept a journal. On my 3rd incident that summer, I decided to stay awake. I set up my truck on the service road above the campground and watched with binoculars. At 2:14 a.m., the youngest boy from Site 12 unzipped his tent. His parents didn't stir. He didn't stumble like a sleepwalker. He walked straight, eyes open, down the trail. I followed. He moved with purpose into a part of the woods that looked like ordinary scrub. Then the ground gave way. A trapdoor, steel, not wood, opened silently. He climbed down a ladder into the dark. The door shut behind him, leaving the forest untouched. I marked the spot with a rock cairn. The next morning, The boy was back in his tent, snoring softly. I went to my boss, Camp Director Harris. He'd worked Pine Hollow since the 80s, a stiff man with a permanent squint. I told him what I'd seen. He didn't even flinch, just sighed, rubbed his temples, and said, "Don't go near the doors again, Brooks. That's not your job. What's under there?" I asked. "You don't want the answer," he said. Then, quieter, "It's been there longer than you or me. My job is to keep it fed. Yours is to keep parents calm." I thought he was joking, but his eyes weren't joking. I couldn't let it go. A week later, I returned with bolt cutters and a headlamp. I found a cairn, found the hidden door. It opened easier than I expected. The ladder went down 30 feet into concrete. At the bottom stretched a tunnel, humming faintly like power lines overhead. I followed the hum. The walls were damp, lined with old wiring. At intervals, I passed glass chambers, each holding a child. Not dead, not awake. Their chests rose and fell. Tubes ran from their arms into a machine that throbbed with a sick rhythm. The machine was massive, built into the stone like it had grown there. Lights pulsed across its surface, not steady electricity, but organic, like veins glowing under skin. I pressed a hand against the glass of one chamber. The girl inside fluttered her eyes open. Her lips moved. "Battery," she whispered. Behind me, footsteps echoed. Harris stepped into the light, his ranger hat low, his voice calm. "You shouldn't have come here." I pointed at the children. "What is this?" "It's a lock," he said. "The machine keeps something beneath us contained. It takes energy. Children are compatible. They come back. They forget. Everyone is safe." "Safe?" I spat. "You've been feeding kids into this for 40 years. He didn't deny it. "Would you rather it breaks free?" The hum deepened, vibrating my bones. For a moment I thought I heard a voice beneath it, massive and slow, breathing words through the stone. He reached for me, not with violence, but pity. "You can leave, Brooks. Pretend you never saw this. That's what I did when I was you. And if I don't, then you'll end up part of the system, like the rest of them." The children's eyes blinked open all at once, fogged with green light. Their mouths moved together, whispering in unison. I couldn't understand the language, but Harris nodded like he knew every word. I ran. The tunnel shook behind me. Harris shouted, his voice breaking into static. The hum rose into a howl. I scrambled up the ladder, shoved the steel door closed, and piled dirt and branches over it until the forest looked ordinary again. By dawn, the boy from Site 7 was back in his sleeping bag. His mother swore he hadn't moved all night. Harris met my eyes during rounds, gave a slow shake of his head. A warning. I transferred out of Pine Hollow at the end of the season. My exit paperwork listed stress-related fatigue, but I can't unsee it. Every campground, every trail I visit now, I wonder what's underneath. Sometimes, late at night, I hear a low hum in my dreams. I see children's eyes glowing green in the dark, and I hear that one word again, from lips too small to know it. Battery. My name's Jake Coleman. I thought I was lucky when they gave me the fire tower post. Some rangers hate it. Too lonely, too quiet, but I like the idea of a watchtower in the middle of nowhere, where the sky goes black and the stars feel close enough to grab. The tower was 40 feet up, just a box on stilts with a radio, a cot, and windows on all sides. My only orders: report smoke, check in hourly, and don't wander too far after dark. I learned pretty quick why no one stayed long. The first night was uneventful. Coyotes yipped, wind rattled the frame. But the second night, at 11:37 p.m., the radio crackled. A voice came through, thin, ragged. "Hello? Please, I'm lost. This is Aaron Finch, hiker permit 224. I'm by a ridge with a dead pine. Please." My hands froze on the mic. Aaron Finch. I'd read his name on a missing person report last week. Search and rescue had called it off 3 days ago. I pressed the button. Aaron, this is Ranger Coleman. Can you see any landmarks? Static, then a sob. They won't let me out. Please. Then silence. I marked the location he described and checked at dawn. There was no ridge with a dead pine anywhere near. Just scrub and stone. The next night, more voices came. A woman begging for help from a trail lined with lanterns. A boy crying, saying he couldn't find his parents. A man repeating, "Don't answer him. Don't answer him." Each voice claimed to be someone who'd gone missing in these woods. All had permits. All were names I recognized. They weren't supposed to be alive. I started sketching maps, marking where the voices said they were. But the places didn't exist here. A trail where no trail had ever been. A pond in the middle of a dry ridge. It was like they were calling from a version of the park that didn't line up with ours. A shadow copy. The worst part? Sometimes I'd look through the binoculars and, for a second, I saw what they described. A lantern glow on a distant hill. A silver pond under the moon. Then I'd blink and it was gone. On my fourth night, I fell asleep in the chair. Woke up to a sound behind me. I turned and froze. In the window was my own face. Not a reflection. The angle was wrong. I was looking out, but the other me was looking in. His expression was calm, almost curious. Then he smiled. Not the way I smile. Slower, stretching too far. I lunged, slamming my fist into the glass. The image vanished. When I looked again, it was only my reflection. But the smile lingered in my mind. The next night, I decided not to answer the radio. I kept the mic off, but the voices kept coming. Then one voice cut through them all. It was mine. Jake Coleman. You're not supposed to be there. You're supposed to be here. My blood ran cold. The other voices screamed, all at once, overlapping, begging me not to listen. My double kept talking, calm and steady. You can't last. The tower is the door. Open it. The air inside went heavy, like the whole room was sinking. My flashlight flickered, even though the batteries were fresh. By dawn, I was ready to quit. I packed my gear and climbed down a ladder. But when my boots hit the dirt, the forest was wrong. The trail twisted left when it should have gone right. The trees leaned together, their branches braided like rope. The air smelled sharp, metallic, not pine. I checked my compass. The needle spun like it was drunk. I wasn't in my park anymore. I wandered for hours, panic rising. Then I found a clearing. In it stood the missing. Dozens of them. Hikers, campers, kids. Their clothes were worn, but their faces were pale, untouched by time. They stared at me without blinking. One of them stepped forward, a man in a red jacket. His voice was the one from the radio, Aaron Finch. You shouldn't have answered, he said. Now he knows where you are. Ooh, I croaked. The crowd turned as one, looking past me. I spun around, and there he was, me, standing between the trees, hands at his sides, smiling the same too wide smile. I ran. Branches whipped my face, roots clawed my boots. The voices chased me, hundreds of them, shouting my name, calling me back. My double's footsteps were silent but close. The forest bent around me, trails folding, landmarks repeating. Every turn led me back to the clearing. The missing stood waiting. My double moved closer, each step measured. Switch, he said softly. You rest. I'll take your place. No one will know. His eyes glowed faintly in the dusk. Not like an animal's. Like lanterns burning from inside. I don't remember climbing, but suddenly I was back in the tower. My gear was where I left it. The cot still rumpled. The radio silent. I stare at my reflection in the window. My own tired face. But then it blinked out of sync with me. Just once. I still sit in the fire tower. Still check in every hour. Still scan for smoke. But the voices keep coming. Sometimes it's hikers I know are dead. Sometimes it's kids begging for their parents. And sometimes it's me, whispering from the static. I don't know if I ever really made it back. When I shave in the mornings, the mirror fogs. And sometimes the face looking back at me smiles before I do. And every night, just before midnight, the radio clicks on by itself. And my voice says, "It's time." It started with complaints from hikers. Trail 17 was only a 3-mile loop through Gorham Pines, but people came back swearing they'd walked it for days. One family insisted they'd covered 10 miles and never reached the parking lot. A college kid said he found the same hollow log 5 times, even though he kept heading downhill. My boss told me it was bad signage. Hikers exaggerate when they get scared, but I know how to read terrain. And when I hiked Trail 17 myself, I noticed things I couldn't explain. The first mile was normal enough, oak and pine, a steady slope. But then the markers changed. Instead of yellow diamonds, the blazes on the trees were red. I'd painted them myself the month before. They shouldn't have changed color. I kept walking. 10 minutes later, the creek that should have been on my left was suddenly on my right. The sound of water switched sides like I crossed it, though I hadn't. That night, back at the ranger station, I pulled out the maps. Trail 17 looked ordinary. No one else believed me when I said the land itself was moving. A week later, we got a call. A couple had vanished on Trail 17. Their car was still at the lot, phones going straight to voicemail. I went in at dusk with a headlamp and radio. After an hour, I heard crying. I found them huddled beneath a cedar. Their clothes were shredded, not from animals, but from sheer wear like they'd been walking for weeks. "We can't get out," the woman sobbed. "Every turn leads us back." Her partner stared at me, hollow-eyed. "The trail doesn't want us to leave." I got them out, but it wasn't easy. Every time we followed my compass, the path bent wrong. I had to cut straight through brush, ignoring the trail entirely, until the lot appeared like a mirage. The couple swore they'd been gone 3 days. Their watches said only 6 hours. I filed my report. My supervisor skimmed it, then folded the page in half. "Beth, you're too new to be writing stories. Leave Trail 17 to me." "People are disappearing," I said. He leaned close. "Some trails aren't meant for maps. Trail 17 is one of them. We use it when we need to." "Use it?" He didn't answer. He just said, "If hikers ask, tell them it's closed for maintenance." 2 nights later, I couldn't sleep. I drove back to the lot. A man stood at the trailhead, hands in his pockets, staring at the trees. "You're not supposed to be here," I said. Neither was he. His clothes were decades out of date, flannel tucked into high-waisted jeans, boots cracked with age. He looked me over like he was trying to place me. "I walked in on a Sunday," he said. His voice was dry, used up. "It was 1979. Is it still?" I didn't answer. He turned and walked down the trail, and before I could stop him, the path swallowed him whole. I had to know, so I went in with a pack, compass, flares, extra water, a roll of twine to mark my path. At first, it worked. I tied bright orange flags every 50 yards. But when I looked back after a mile, the flags were gone. The trees were different, taller, denser, dripping moss I'd never seen in Gorham. The air grew heavy, like breathing through cloth. My watch spun forward, then back. I found carvings on a birch, "Help US." Beneath it, dozens of names. Some I recognized from old missing persons reports. Others were carved too fresh. Then I heard footsteps behind me. A figure emerged from the trees. Tall, cloaked in something that wasn't fabric so much as woven bark and shadow. No face, just an impression of one. It carried a staff made of twisted roots. The forest bent with it. Trails shifted under its steps, opening and closing like doorways. "You shouldn't be here," it said. Its voice wasn't loud, but it vibrated inside my skull. "What is this trail?" I asked, though my throat was tight. "A seam," it said. "A place between places. I walk it. I collect." "Collect what?" "Specimens. Wanderers. Those who ask too many questions." I thought of my supervisor's warning. The figure tilted its head. You can leave now if you wish, but the trail remembers those who see it. It will want you back. I turned and ran. Branches clawed at me, roots tried to trip me. The trail bent and doubled, showing me the same boulder again and again. My lungs burned. Then, just as my knees gave out, the parking lot appeared. My truck sat waiting, dew fresh on the windshield. When I looked back, the trailhead was gone. Just trees, thick and unbroken. I tried to file another report. My supervisor cut me off. "Drop it, Beth. Trail 17 isn't a problem. It's a solution." I pressed him. A solution to what? His eyes hardened. To people who don't belong. To visitors who ask too much. To rangers who dig too deep. That was the last conversation we had. A week later, he transferred me to desk duty. But I know Trail 17 is still out there, waiting for the next unlucky hiker. Sometimes, driving past the pines, I see people standing at the trailhead. People who don't look like they're from now. A woman in a bonnet. A soldier in an old uniform. A man with a neon fanny pack straight out of the 90s. They step onto the trail and vanish. And sometimes, when I close my eyes, I hear that voice again, calm and patient. The trail remembers. It will want you back. And I wonder if I ever really left. Every spring, I run the wildlife census in Red Valley Park. It's a simple job, counting elk herds, logging bear dens, estimating deer populations. It keeps the biologists happy and the funding rolling in. This year should have been no different. Same clipboard, same binoculars, same long hours with coffee gone cold. But the numbers didn't add up. The first sign was the elk. Normally, we track about 200 in the northern range. This time, I counted nearly 600 in one valley. My notes looked wrong, like I'd added an extra digit by accident. Then came the coyotes. I spotted packs of 10, 12, even 15. Coyotes don't run that big. By the end of the week, I had logged thousands more animals than our ecosystem could support. There wasn't enough forage, water, or space. It was impossible. When I showed my supervisor, he frowned but told me not to worry. Numbers get messy in the field. Write it up neat and no one will notice. But I couldn't shake the feeling that something was watching me from inside those herds. One morning, I hiked to a meadow near Willow Creek. A doe stood in the grass, perfectly still. Too still. Her eyes tracked me without blinking. Her ears didn't twitch. I raised my binoculars and froze. The doe's pupils weren't black. They were cloudy, milky, like she'd died hours ago. But her body was upright, breathing, moving. When I lowered the binoculars, she was gone. No sound of hooves. Just gone. In the dirt where she'd stood, I found a tag. Plastic, bright blue. Stamped with a serial number. I followed the tags. Over the next week, I found more blue, red, yellow, hidden under leaves, wedged in mud. They weren't ours. They weren't state-issued. One evening, while tracing a herd of elk, I saw a chain-link fence where none should be. Beyond it stood a squat concrete building, half buried in the hillside. No signage. No windows. Just vents pumping out warm air. Through binoculars, I saw trucks with logos for Silver Gen Pharmaceuticals. I never heard of them. The animals clustered near the fence. Elk, coyotes, even a black bear, waiting, silent. Then a side door opened. Men in lab coats wheeled out crates. Inside, more animals. Identical elk, identical coyotes, identical bears. Released into the wild like stock replenishment. Clones. That night, I returned with my badge, thinking I could demand answers. I never got that far. A guard stepped out of the shadows before I reached the fence. Not a park ranger. Private security. His rifle gleamed in the moonlight. "You're out of bounds," he said flatly. "This is federal land," I argued. "Not anymore." He pointed me back toward the trail. I left, but not before I caught sight of one of the elk standing by the fence, staring straight at me. Its cloudy eyes glowed faintly in the dark. I dug into Silver Gen. No public office, no website, just a few patent filings for cellular replication substrates. That night, I dreamed of the doe again. Only this time she spoke in a flat, mechanical voice. Replace, replace, replace. I woke drenched in sweat. At dawn, I checked the census numbers again. The herds hadn't thinned. If anything, there were more. Too many. The park was swelling with duplicates. And then the behavior changed. Coyotes started shadowing me on patrol, not hunting, just watching. Ravens gathered on the tower roof, croaking in unison, staring down like sentries. The elk herds moved as one, not scattered, perfectly in sync, like they shared a signal. One night, I found paw prints outside my cabin. Wolf-sized, but there haven't been wolves here in decades. Scratched into the dirt beside them were letters. Crude, but unmistakable. We are enough. I couldn't ignore it. One stormy night, I slipped back to the facility. The guards were gone, maybe sheltering from the rain. I cut through the fence and slipped inside. The building smelled of bleach and blood. Fluorescent lights buzzed overhead. Hallways branched off, each lined with glass rooms. Inside the rooms were animals, rows of them, floating in tanks filled with milky fluid. Copies, some half-formed, others complete. Each tank had a monitor tracking vital signs. Some monitors showed brain waves identical to human patterns. At the far end, I found a chamber labeled Control. On the wall was a whiteboard. Scribbled notes read, Subject cognition increasing. Problem, self-awareness. Solution, cull older batches. Replace with new. And then, in darker ink, they know what we're doing. I heard noise. Not footsteps, something heavier. Breathing. The hall went cold. I turned and saw them. A pack of coyotes blocking the exit. Their eyes glowed faintly, milky white. They didn't attack. They herded me slowly toward the tanks. In the reflection of the glass, I saw myself. Dozens of me, not animals, humans, floating in tanks, identical faces slack and dreaming. One opened its eyes. My eyes. It mouthed words I couldn't hear, but I knew what it said. Replace. I woke up in my cabin. My census logs were stacked neatly on the desk. My boots were clean, no mud, no blood. The radio crackled. My supervisor's voice came through calm. Good work on the census, Mike. Numbers look fine, real tidy. But when I opened the logbook, I froze. Every page was filled in, not in my handwriting. The numbers were perfect, balanced, believable. The impossible totals erased. Outside, a herd of elk grazed, all turning their heads toward me at once. Watching, waiting, and in the reflection of the window, I smiled before I realized I wasn't smiling. When I took the overnight security post at the visitor center, they gave me a laminated sheet of rules. Lock all doors by 11:59 p.m. Do not look outside after midnight. If you hear knocking, do not answer. If something speaks your name, ignore it. The shift ends at 6 a.m. Do not leave before then. I laughed when I read it. A little local hazing, I thought. But the look on the chief ranger's face was stone. Follow them, she said. Every word. So I did. At least I tried. The visitor center was quiet. Gift shop closed, exhibits dimmed, vending machines humming. I made round with my flashlight, checked the locks, radioed in. At 11:59 sharp, I clicked the last bolt shut. The clock turned over to midnight, and the building changed. The air pressed heavier, like the atmosphere doubled. The lights flickered. Outside, the parking lot lights went out one by one, until the windows were only black mirrors. I remembered Rule 2 and forced myself not to look. At 12:14, the first knock came. 3 raps on the glass doors. Too polite for an intruder, too deliberate for an accident. I sat at the desk, heart hammering, eyes locked on the rules sheet. My radio hissed, but no voice followed. The knocking came again, louder this time. I clenched my fists, whispered to myself, "Don't answer. Don't answer." Finally, it stopped. The silence after was worse. At 1:07, it called my name. Soft at first, like a coworker outside. "Danny, you left the side door open." I knew I hadn't. Then again, closer. "Danny, just a crack. Come check." The rules sheet blurred in my vision. I gripped it until the laminate bent. I didn't move. The voice sighed, disappointed, then laughed. The laugh went on too long. By 2:30, the building wasn't a visitor center anymore. The gift shop shelves stretched higher than the ceiling. The display cases showed animals I'd never seen. Bones arranged into shapes that shouldn't exist, pelts that shimmered like oil. The floor tiles shifted underfoot, rearranging into patterns. The air smelled of ash and salt water. I walked the halls, flashlight beam jittering, and realized I wasn't guarding anything. I was contained here, keeping whatever was inside from getting out. At 3:11, I saw them. Figures moving through the lobby. Some looked human. Hikers in torn clothes, businessmen in suits. Others weren't human at all. Shapes with too many arms. Shadows with glowing veins. They walked past me without turning their heads. They moved toward the doors, but none of them touched the glass. They just faded as they reached it, as if the visitor center was a way station, not a destination. One brushed against me as it passed. Cold flooded my veins. For a second, I saw myself, older, thinner, eyes clouded, standing at the desk decade from now, still on shift. Then it was gone. By 4 o'clock, exhaustion set in. The radio crackled again, but this time it wasn't my name. It was my father's voice. He'd been dead 10 years. "Danny," it said softly, the way he used to when I was a kid. "Come outside, just for a minute." I almost did. My hand touched the doorknob. Then I remembered Rule 2. Do not look outside after midnight. I let go. My knuckles were white. The voice turned bitter. "You'll regret it." At 5:12, the glass cracked. A fissure ran down the front doors, spreading like ice on a lake. The black outside pressed against it, bulging inward. The rules hadn't said what to do if the doors broke. I grabbed the heaviest thing I could find, a fire axe, and stood ready. My breath fogged in the air. The crack widened. Something pressed its hand, if you could call a hand, against the glass. Too many fingers. Skin like smoke. It whispered not my name, but all the names I'd ever known. Danny, Daniel, son, brother, Ranger, layered together. Then the clock struck 6 o'clock. The glass sealed itself. The lights snapped back on. Outside, the parking lot was empty, the sky pale with dawn. The building looked normal again. Postcards in neat racks, stuffed animals on shelves, Ranger brochures stacked by the counter. My shift was over. When the day staff came in, I handed the rule sheet back. The chief ranger looked at me. "You followed them?" "Every word," I said. She nodded once. "Then you'll be fine. For now. I still work nights sometimes. I still lock the doors 11:59, sit with the rules in my lap, and pray the glass holds. But lately, when I pass the front windows, I see my reflection smiling a second too late. And sometimes, just before dawn, I hear my father's voice again. This time, it doesn't sound like it's outside. It sounds like it's already in the building.